All right, today we're going to unpack a really fascinating and often misunderstood part of the Bible. I'm talking about the prophet Jeremiah's oracle against the ancient superpower of Babylon. So let's jump right in.
So let's start with a big question. A lot of us have probably been taught to see prophecy as this kind of secret code, right? Like a detailed roadmap for modern events. Maybe you remember Cold War era sermons identifying Russia as the enemy in Ezekiel, or even theories linking Saddam Hussein's Iraq to a rebuilt Babylon. But you have to ask, is that really what the prophets were doing?
So, using Jeremiah's really dramatic prophecy against Babylon as our case study here, we're going to explore a different way of looking at it. What if prophecy is less of a secret code and more of a powerful pattern?
Okay, here's a really helpful idea from a scholar named Dr. Gary Yates. He suggests that prophecy isn't a detailed program, like a movie script where every single actor is named. Instead, it provides patterns. These are more like general pictures of how God acts in history. And when you look at it that way, the focus really shifts from who and when to the much bigger and I think more important questions of how and why. I love this sports analogy from Dr. Yates. It just makes so much sense. Think about it. If you're watching a recording of a game and you already know your team wins, you don't really panic over a fumble in the second quarter, right? Well, prophecy offers that same kind of assurance. It tells us the final score, that in the end, God wins. And knowing that lets us face all the chaotic ups and downs of history with a kind of steady confidence. All right, so let's apply this way of thinking to our main subject. At the very heart of Jeremiah's prophecy against Babylon is this powerful theme. It's all about the great reversal. And here's the crucial point. It's pretty wild. First, God uses the Babylonian Empire as his instrument to judge his own people, Judah. But then, and this is the stunning reversal, God turns around and judges that very same instrument, Babylon, in order to rescue and restore his people. The judge literally becomes the judged. It's an incredible turnaround. And what's amazing is that Jeremiah makes this super explicit in the text. I mean, look at these parallels. He literally recycles his own sermons. The exact same phrases, like an enemy from the north, a holy war, or warriors becoming like women in fear. He uses them first against Jerusalem and then turns them right around on Babylon. It's just a masterful literary move to show that God's justice is perfectly balanced. Now, to really feel the full weight of this prophecy, you got to put yourself back in that time. You have to understand just how invincible Babylon seemed. We're talking about the greatest city in the world, the undisputed superpower of its day, period. I mean, just think about this for a second. The city had a double wall system. The inner wall was 21 feet thick. It was surrounded by a massive moat and fortified with 250 defensive towers. To any army back then, it would have seemed completely, utterly impenetrable. And yet, in the face of all that overwhelming power, Jeremiah delivers this prophecy of absolute annihilation. He's not just talking about defeat, he's talking about total desolation, a ruin fit only for wild animals. The contrast is just, well, it's staggering. Okay, but here's the twist, and this is where a lot of people get tripped up. The historical records, they tell us that when the Persian army, led by Cyrus the Great, showed up, they took Babylon without a shot. The city wasn't leveled. So, what's going on here? How do we square this peaceful takeover with Jeremiah's prophecy of a horrifying, violent end? Well, the key is understanding Jeremiah's literary style. He's using something scholars call covenant curse language, and this was a pretty common way in the ancient world to talk about a kingdom's political fall. You'd use this really vivid, symbolic language of total destruction. The goal wasn't to give a literal play-by-play of the event, but to convey the immense significance of the fall. And this actually brings us to a much bigger point. Because of its history, the idea of Babylon, well, it becomes so much more than just a city. It totally transforms into a powerful symbol that echoes throughout the entire biblical story. Let's just trace this pattern for a second. It all starts way back in Genesis with the Tower of Babel, right? A city built on pure human pride. Then you get to Isaiah, and he captures that arrogant spirit of Babylon's king. In Daniel, it's the head of gold on the statue, the first great human empire that stands against God's kingdom. And all of this builds and builds until it culminates in the book of Revelation, where Babylon the Great isn't a literal city on a map, but a symbol for any world system that's built on power and opposition to God. Yeah, this quote from Desmond Alexander just sums it up perfectly. He says, in Revelation, the city of Babylon symbolizes humanity's obsession with wealth and power, which becomes a substitute for knowing God. Basically, this symbolic Babylon represents any human system that uses its power to get rich at the expense of others, and in doing so, sets itself up as a substitute for God.
So when you zoom out, you see that the Bible isn't just telling us about the fall of one city. It's really presenting a tale of two competing cities, and they represent two fundamentally different ways to live. So on one side, you've got Babylon, the city of man. It's built on pride, it's fueled by wealth and power, and ultimately, it's a place of exile and alienation. But then, on the other side, you have the New Jerusalem, the city of God. This one isn't built by human hands, it's a gift. It's centered on worship and community, and it represents the true home for God's people. So, you see, what started as a prophecy against an ancient empire, it becomes something deeply personal for us. These two cities, they represent two completely different value systems that we can choose to align our lives with. So the question Jeremiah's prophecy leaves for us today, it isn't really about ancient history. It's about our own hearts. It's this: which city are you building your life in?